Hello and welcome to another episode of The Endless Stream. I'm Aidan, and as usual I'm here with Brian and Kevin. We are three artists and illustrators, filmmakers and bullshit artists that are going to talk to you about some of the endless stream of content that has been delivered to us through Amazon Prime, Netflix, YouTube, Spotify, Apple TV. Wherever you get your content, we're going to take a chunk of it and we're going to talk about it. Given the nature of these conversations, they're very spoiler heavy, so this week if you haven't seen Highlander or Night Moves, maybe go off and have a look at them and come back and join the conversation. Those two films are particularly old and kind of zeitgeisty, so I mean maybe it's not as big an issue this week. You could just join in. If you like what you hear, please consider subscribing to the podcast or going over to Instagram and giving us a follow over there. We put up illustrations and clips over there, so there's a little added content. All of our socials are at The Endless Cast, so you can find us there. All that said, let's just get into it. Okay, this week we have a bunch of things to have a chat in and around, and we can come back to some stuff. I know we said we'd watch Night Moves. I watched it. Kev didn't quite get to it, but Brian, I'm sure, can talk to me about it, and we can have a chat. I watched some movies. I watched some television. We got a couple of Modocs in, and there's a bunch of trailers. Brian, what have you been watching this week?
Mostly the Simpsons early seasons, starting from around season 3.
Why season 3? Is that when Conan was writing and stuff?
Well, he was, I think, but he might have been writing before that as well. I think it's the first season is still quite ropey in terms of like the animation and the voice acting and stuff like that.
Even the character design.
Yeah,
it's a bit weird.
The second season has some good stuff, but I think it was the third when it had like properly settled into its format and stuff. Yeah, so I just kind of started from there. Got up to season 6, I think, so far.
The mad thing about The Simpsons that I think about occasionally is I know exactly the episode where I stopped watching The Simpsons or stopped thinking, oh, this is must-see every week television. And it's the episode where Apu cheats on his wife. And it has this gag where Homer is like, he walks into the Quickie Mart and sees the affair and walks out backwards and walks all the way home backwards. And it's a sort of absurdist kind of thing that I feel like was a reaction to Family Guy at the time, because it had just sort of started around the same time. And then they have that moment at the end where Apu reconciles with his wife and they start to get busy, and it pans to the window and Homer's there on a ladder, and then he starts hopping backwards away, sort of eyes fixed stare, sort of shocked at what he's seen, hopping backwards down the street. And as he's hopping away into the distance, I remember thinking, this is such an out of character kind of gag for The Simpsons. And I don't think I laughed during that whole episode. Like, I remember having the thought, I didn't laugh during that whole episode. Oh God, is The Simpsons not funny anymore? But the thing that's funny there is, like, I think that's in season 15, and they're at season 30 or something at this point. So there's more Simpsons that I haven't watched than I have watched at this point. So every so often I get the idea that maybe I should go back and there's got to be some gold in 15 years, right?
Don't.
I was going to say, yeah, I stopped watching it because, and it was probably around, I'd say like kind of, maybe it was 2003 or 4 maybe, I don't know. But it would have just been like, it just became what celebrity cameo of the week kind of thing would be in it, you know? And then the episode kind of being centered around that celebrity. And like, I remember Ricky Gervais being in it and Simon Cowell.
I was about to say Ricky Gervais did. Yeah, now I'm
that's when I stopped.
Strumming a little guitar. And, I'll put a bit of music out, I'm going to seduce you, Marge. I was like, oh, this isn't funny. This isn't fucking...
Yeah, that's when I stopped, to be honest, because it just became so big, it was just celebrity cameos every week, you know? I think anyways, that's why.
It was still quite silly and absurdist early on. It just delivered it in a very different way. I was kind of surprised how early on that. I completely agree with Aidan. There was a point where it was definitely trying to ape Family Guy a bit more. But that's not to say it didn't do a lot of those type of jokes already. It just they kind of deliver them. They structure them in a lot better way, you know.
Yes,
they make much more sense. Even though I think one of the best ones, like I say, so it's one of the best episodes, and it's one of the like absolutely absurd jokes, but it works in the moment, is when Homer finds the sugar And Marge is trying to tell him get rid of it, and he's like, I got to protect the sugar. And he's like, nobody wants the sugar. And then he pulls out the English guy drinking the tea. And that is so stupid. It's so silly. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was in tears laughing at it. And like, it was almost like I knew everything. I knew the guy was going to say, I nicked it straight away, because it was just the way he walks over and he goes, goodbye. And every part of it just made sense, even though it was like out of nowhere. And then it cuts to the two beekeepers, and they're basically, it's basically Adam West, Batman, as a beekeeper. And that's so silly, but it just, the episode creates the context for all of that really early on. So even though it's bizarre and it's strange and you don't see it coming, it's set up early on, because it spends so much time with Homer, like selling sugar door to door, that it's like, okay, this is silly, but it just works better, as opposed to it being a completely out of left field thing. Kind of, it's like, why is Homer on a ladder in the first place outside none of that makes no sense, And
and I think that Family Guy kind of did nail that type of stuff, because, like, as you said, Simpsons will kind of have these like far out kind of gags, but it was in context, it was relevant to the show or whatever, to the storyline. But Family Guy would just be like, do you remember that time? And then it would just cut to it. Like, they didn't have to have a necessarily context, they were just animating a gag or a punchline or something. And Simpsons were definitely trying to do a bit of that at some stage, and it just wasn't that successful. It was like they were trying to be quirky and random, but it was so forced.
Yeah, I heard somebody say at one point that when the Simpsons got its start, or when the Simpsons were starting out, a lot of its references were films of old Hollywood. There's a lot of Citizen Kane and Mr. Burns. Yeah. There's a lot of Alice in Wonderland. There's a lot of like, the references were the media of,
growing up, probably.
I mean, Conan is the guy everybody thinks of as a Simpsons writer, but there was a wider range. Like, I don't know their names is the thing, but like, these are the things that they grew up watching. Whereas at a certain point, the writers that were writing on The Simpsons were referencing The Simpsons.
Yes, yeah.
Which is mental.
Yeah. It's a good point, though. It's a really good point. Like, people would have grown up watching The Simpsons, becoming writer for The Simpsons. It's even when you watch RuPaul now. RuPaul has been going on for 13 years. You can imagine, like, there was
35 seasons.
35 seasons. Bloody
I'm just guessing. I just love the way that, like, it used to be a season a year, but now they roll out 2 seasons.
Reality TV has 2 or 3 seasons
a year. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Actually, yeah. But we just say, but we say it's going on for at least 10 years, anyways. Maybe you know.
Yeah.
But it's just like, there could have been a 10-year-old watching that. You know. Fast forward 10 years and they're on whatever season, and it's just like, that's so different from the initial few people who were on the first seasons, and kind of like say, being like the kind of the front line of making that stuff mainstream, essentially, or household names and all that kind of stuff. And then, like, it must be so different from people growing up from 10 years old watching RuPaul and then being on the show, you know.
Brian, you must be watching on Disney Plus then.
Yeah.
So then, I guess what I'll be curious to see next week or the week after, or whatever, is at what point you decide, no, I'm done with this.
Yeah. Like,
where is the line?
Off the top of my head, like, I feel like it started to decline a bit, kind of from around season 9 or 10, I think. But the one I remember specifically deciding, kind of, and it might have happened sooner, but the one for me, I think it was season 13, and not only was it not funny, but it was, like, aggravating to watch, was the Scream a Pillar episode. I don't know if you guys remember that one, where there's...
I remember the little thing screaming. Yeah. It was something on the... it was an endangered animal on their tree that they couldn't get rid of, and it was keeping them from sleeping. Is that it?
Yeah, but they also had to... I think it had one funny line in it, to be fair, where I think they're kind of charged with its... protection, essentially. And they're reading about it, and on top of it, screaming all the time, and like it being really, frustrating, and then it affecting their sleep and stuff. I think there's a line in it where Homer's like reading about its behavior and characteristics, and I think it says it's sexually attracted to fire or something like that. I think it's the one laugh in the episode, and then the rest of it, like, by the time the episode was over, I was just like, that was actually, it wasn't just not funny, it was frustrating and annoying to watch. And I think,
I don't know that episode, to be honest. I can't think of it.
It's bad. It's really bad.
What season was that? 13?
I think that was 13, yeah.
What else happened in that season, do you know?
It was season 13, episode 21 for anybody that wants to go and have a look at it. The takeaway there is let's get a report back from Brian at which point he goes.
At which point can
you stands it no more?
God, it's very Futurama looking.
I watched the Friends reunion.
Yuck.
Friends is a funny one because I think since it got cancelled in 2004, the people that grew up watching it definitely went through an arc of like, this is a show that was must-see TV, to this is guilty pleasure television, to I'll watch it if it's on in the background, to I've raised my children on it, to kids absolutely love it again, and it's kind of this, it is this kind of larger than life sort of thing. You know, you go, oh, it's a shit sitcom. It's as good. Yeah, I don't want to say it's a shit sitcom. It's a good sitcom, and people love it.
One of my friends pretty much learned English from it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's this kind of universal thing, and you kind of dismiss it. But in watching this reunion thing, you do stop and go, this has had a massive effect on people. It ran from 94 to 2004, and we're in 2021 talking about it.
I didn't realise it ran to 2004, because I do remember like the finale and stuff and watching it. But I didn't think I was in secondary school at the time. If anything, I thought it was probably like sixth class first year maybe, but I didn't realise it ran to 2004. I don't know if I watched it that
It was
much.
still running when we started college, Brian.
Yeah, I remember talking about it in secondary school. I think it was on Monday nights with Father Ted.
Yes,
and like
it was,
the next day, you know, you'd be. I think there was a third show on as well.
Scrubs was on around that time as well.
Yeah, and there might have been a panel, or Irish panel show as well, like maybe Don't Feed the Gondolas, something like that. But
or the Blizzard of Odd.
Yeah, there was some. But I just remember the next day, you know, talking about Father Ted and like new episodes of Father Ted and Friends, and being a fan. But I stopped being a fan before the show was cancelled. I think there's a point where it just really, again, it was aggravating to watch. The characters were caricatures of themselves. Like they really pushed everybody's kind of defining thing to the limit.
Yeah, like Ross got so much more ridiculous.
Ross was painful to watch. I know people find that pivot line funny, but I was just I remember watching that episode when it was new and just
That's
kind of going
as well, though, you know.
Yeah, you know, but for me, that was kind of like a point where I was just like, I don't like this show anymore. I think it's aged very poorly as well. Like I would have thought it was quite funny before that, and then going back and watching even those earlier episodes, it's aged quite a bit.
Well, I mean, it's you look back and you see like the technology they're using. It's aged.
But not. I mean, yeah, not just in that sense though. I just did a lot of the type of humor and stuff. But I'd say the same thing about Seinfeld. Like I was never a huge Seinfeld fan, and by the time I was watching Seinfeld, I felt like I was watching something that was decades old. And when I even go back then and watch, I mean, pick any episode anywhere, it's either again the technology or the style of humor is. I was never a big fan. Yeah. Anyway, so
it's funny that you said about Seinfeld, because I can definitely relate in terms of like when I would have watched Seinfeld, I definitely felt older, decades old. But I was probably watching Everybody Loves Raymond, which was probably around the same time, and when I think back of it, it doesn't look as dated in my head.
Mm-hmm. But like I think I don't know if I'm trying to lay claim to some degree of fucking superhuman sitcom watching skill. Like Paramount Comedy Channel would start at 6:45 with an episode of Different Strokes. Then there'd be Taxi. You know, like I grew up watching shows that were 20 years old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the same.
So
would have I.
Yeah, like
I had RDE. Everything was at least 20 years old in RDE.
So like I still love Seinfeld. Though you do go back and watch it now and go, like there's a number of moments where like the sponge episode is sort of a famous one. The contraceptive sponge is discontinued, and he finds that his girlfriend is stocked up and has a wardrobe full of contraceptives, and he's like, ugh, she's perverted. That as a mindset is like, she's got contraceptive and she's prepared for sex in her life.
Yeah,
like,
it's
such a
there's a lot of bad takes.
Yeah, it was just it's frustrating to see how close to the surface bad attitudes to certain things were not that long ago.
Wasn't a fan of Seinfeld, to be honest, but I definitely don't think say what it was on TV when I was younger. Stuff. I wasn't demographic. I certainly
I
didn't understand a lot of it.
To be honest, I don't think it's good. Like, I think it's aged a lot, but I think even watching it, it's a lot of it is derived from dated stand-up comedy anyway. Stuff that stuff that we can objectively say today is bad, but it feels like Seinfeld is on a pedestal still. Like, people aren't. I don't think people look at it with an honest, critical eye, because I think it's genuinely poor.
Right. I'm going to pivot back to Friends because I do love Seinfeld. I'm currently watching it every day at lunchtime. I'm on season 8 again. I do think it holds up in many ways.
It's badly acted.
Ooh. Have you heard of King of Queens?
So it is badly acted. It is.
I'm going to bring us back
really
to. I don't want to get into this argument.
This is an argument. It is badly acted.
I feel like Seinfeld's.
You cannot.
I feel like Seinfeld's one of those shows where he makes a joke and he's kind of waiting for the audience to laugh at home on TV before he carries on. Like, there's a lot of ego there.
I think Jason. I think the cast around him, I love them, and I don't think Jerry's a particularly good actor. And he famously said as much when he got an Emmy, which he said proof positive that if you surround yourself with good actors, you can look like you're or you can fool people into thinking you can act. Like, I love Jason Alexander as George. Michael Richards.
They're good. Well, we can't even talk about him.
He kind of let himself down, to say the least.
It's that Kramer.
Yeah,
shitbag.
No.
You want Dreyfus is the best.
Yeah, like I'm not saying they're bad actors. I'm saying that show is like watching.
Or Dreyfus. Sorry.
It's like watching people. It's like watching people do theater on TV. You know?
Yeah, that's exactly it. They're waiting for the audience to laugh. That's exactly it.
It's broad and it just doesn't work on camera, and I mean, theater on TV doesn't look good because they're performing in a different way. Dreyfus is fucking brilliant, clearly. Like, Veep is. I love Veep.
I hope she's in the MCU more.
No, she definitely is. That you don't. Yeah. You don't stunt.
You don't bring a heavy hitter like that.
You don't stunt cast somebody like that and make a big deal out of their entrance. And she'll be in the Secret Invasion show. Or
if you want a good sitcom made, I recommend King of Queens. It's far superior humor wise and acting.
Can we just put a bleep over that whole sentence?
I love King of Queens. It's great. I've seen all of it. Patton Oswalt, Jerry Stiller.
I'm walking out. This.
Bye, Brian.
Hold on. Just to come back to the original point that this all came up from. Friends reunion. People gave it some shit. I've heard a lot of people going out about Corden.
Hey, look, it's given us the Matt LeBlanc meme.
That's
which
it.
It's given us what?
There's a Matt LeBlanc meme going around on Twitter. If you haven't seen it, we'll share it.
Oh, I've seen it, yeah. I've seen it. He's just sitting there talking about jeans. But I was going to say, I liked Friends when it was on. Nostalgic, not necessarily vibing on it so much in the last 10 years.
And that's a lot of people, except, a new generation has found it on Netflix and watched the fuck out of it.
Which is great.
Aidan, is it a one-off reunion episode? Or
it's a one-off reunion event, and they say, "Oh, the it's never been done before" type of shite goes out.
But is it one episode? And
it's not even an episode. Right. It's one and done, and it's like what they did 5 years or 10 years after MASH aired, which was something they also showed on the Paramount Comedy Channel. This reunion episode where they just put the whole cast in chairs, sat them around, and said, "So, how did you enjoy making the show?" And it's an interview. It's a 2-hour retrospective.
Oh, right.
Yeah, see, I thought it was a scripted TV Friends reunion, and I thought, wow, amazing. But then, it's not a Friends reunion, though. It's just...
No, it's not, but it is a reunion. Like, Lisa Kudrow gets asked the question, would you come back and do another episode? And she says, and it's the kind of best argument for it, they talked about it with the producers, and they said they made a point of making sure everybody ended up in a happy ending, a happily ever after. In order to make new episodes, they have to unhappy someone's ending. Why would we do that?
Yeah, fair.
I think it's a very nice diplomatic answer, and it's also, it can only hurt it. I don't think 2 Sex and the City movies helped the legacy of Sex and the City, I think they ended it in a good place. I think if they sat around for 2 hours with James Corden asking them the questions, it would be insufferable. There is a section where they have a live audience, And obviously people sat there for an hour and a half, and they're in front of the fountain from the credits, and he's asking them questions. And then there's a section where they have a sort of cast and crew get together, and they walk through the old sets, and they talk about their memories from that. They do some activities with an audience where they kind of recreate the quiz thing, where they play the bet at the department. So they ask each other trivia questions about the show, and they have guest stars come in. So Tom Selleck comes in, and Mr. Heckles from downstairs. They have pieces to camera with people that viewed it, and with celebrities that love it. And all of that stuff is cut together over the 1 hour and 40-minute runtime. So you, round about the time it's getting a bit too saccharine with them sitting on the couches crying at each other, it cuts to James Corden and they ask a question, and then it cuts to whatever. And I think they did a good job of it, and I think people would be miserable at giving out about anything they got.
Is Gunther in it?
He does pop up, and it's, I guess it must be COVID related, but like it's odd that the people that they had show up in person and then do a Zoom thing with him. Justin Bieber shows up dressed as a potato because of Ross's Sputnik.
I heard James Corden was insufferable.
But that's what I'm saying. He's not. He's not insufferable.
He is though. Come on.
He's barely in it.
Oh, he
well,
is.
He might be insufferable as a person, as a presence. I'm fine with him, but he's not in it enough to be insufferable. He really isn't. And what people are just giving out about Corden.
I think though the thing is, the audience has such a nostalgia for the show that you could also do an episode just checking in, seeing where they are. And like, you know, a lot of the humor of the 10 years the show was on air was just derived from, you know, little things happening in their lives and kind of making jokes.
They had a life of.
Yeah. So like you could easily follow up on them and just, you know, derive some humor. You could have a Modern Family type episode with them and their kids and stuff. You don't necessarily need high drama. Like, yeah, you've given everybody a happy ending, and happily ever after means, you know, nothing else happened after this point, so let's end it there. But at the same time, like, you know, I don't need it because, like I said, I'm not a fan of the show, but I think the target audience would have quite liked a, you know, drama-free
half-hour
episode or a handful of episodes where you're just popping in and going, you know we left them here and where are they now, and just yeah, I don't know.
Even if they did like little 3-minute bits, gags.
Yeah.
Like the show was cut with just gags. Sorry, Adam.
I 100% hear what you're saying. It makes sense as well. I just don't think it'd be worth it. And I think if they're smart, they'll stick to their guns on this, because they did the whole thing where Lisa Kudrow sang "Smelly Cat," and it's like, Smelly Cat wasn't funny after the first couple of like the first time you heard "Smelly Cat," you're like, that's a funny, awful song, and then it became a thing, and it's like by the time they've got a fucking like a choir and Lady Gaga singing it for 3 minutes in this thing, you're like, this
does that actually happen?
Yeah,
that sounds awful.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't need
poor Lisa Kudrow.
If they were to make a reunion episode, like an episode, we'd check in on Phoebe and she would sing "Smelly Cat," and we'd check in on Chandler and he'd say, "Could I be any more?" And it's just not worth doing, to me anyway. But that's the Friends reunion.
Yeah, Emer and I were just like, we were flicking through stuff on TV the other day, and like kind of a trailer for one of the Sex and the City movies came up, and Kim Cattrall was saying to, like, or I think it was Kim Cattrall, I can't remember, but and I watched Sex and the City back in the day. I've never watched the movies.
That has also aged horribly.
Yes, it has.
Horribly, yeah.
Horribly, yeah. But I was going to say, I watched it back in the day for reasons. And then Aiden's eyebrows. Storylines, Aiden. It was good storylines. Kim Cattrall. But she said,
if you're jacking off to Sex and the City.
No, it was a family show, you weirdo. Anyways. No, I was going to say... it was like, there was just, it was a trailer for it, and she said, like, I think she must be dating some really successful rich person or something, but she says kind of like, oh, we can go to Dubai or something, and he says I could bring 3 of my closest friends and we can go first class and blah blah blah. It's just, you're watching it going like, that literally sounds like the plot like a 10-year-old would write for, like, you know, your dream summer vacation. And it's just like, you know, Mom says we can go on holiday, I can bring my 3 closest friends and we get to go first class. You know, it's just like it's a real flimsy plot. They're
coming back for more episodes on HBO.
Yeah, well, they must have buried the hatchet then, did they? Because there was
Was there a
grief
hatchet?
between some of them.
Really?
Brian would probably know more than me.
I think it was more that Kim Cattrall's character was probably the most popular character, but Sarah Jessica Parker was still like the star of the show, and I think Cattrall just wanted what she felt more she was owed, but then they tried to paint her as being the one blocking the whole thing from going ahead at all. So,
and there was something to do with I think someone's passing and talking about it on Twitter or offering condolences on Twitter and not doing it privately or something. I can't remember, but there was like beef between Kim Cattrall and maybe Sarah Jessica Parker. I can't remember, something like that. Could be completely wrong. Could have been another one of my Kim Cattrall dreams. I can't think of her name right. I don't
Kim
actually
Cattrall?
Had a dream about McGregor last night. He's really mean to me. Whatever.
moving on.
And did that work for you? Moving into
I don't want to
the
touch
news
that.
and trailers.
I don't
Met my expectations, to say the least.
That's
He
what
was an
McGregor
asshole.
said, and then he slapped him in the face.
He didn't fucking slap me. But the helicopter did come down and start firing bullets at us, so everybody scattered. And then I had to look for a dog.
So in the news and trailers end of things, Oscar Isaac confirmed to be playing Moon Knight. I mean, did we not?
I thought that was already
I
confirmed.
mean, they showed training videos of them doing some fight choreography and stuff.
Is that really from Moon Knight though? Like I saw thumbnails of him training, and I saw like the title said that, but I assumed that was some sort of just clickbait that they'd taken training footage of him from literally anything else, and then somebody said, "Oh, this is Moon Knight training." Like I don't know if that was ever confirmed
like I
to be.
that.
Okay.
I feel like I double checked that at the time because it was coming from Isaac's Instagram account. It was coming from Isaac's Instagram account, and it had like hashtag, Sky.
But
Knight
isn't
or
he?
You know what I mean? Like,
isn't he also playing Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid?
there, he lobbied
Because
for
the training, I think it's confirmed.
it's your man who's doing
Voight Roberts, Jordan
Roberts.
Voight Roberts.
Yeah, I never knew it. From Kong Skull Island
Yeah.
and Godzilla versus King Kong.
I believe that's been confirmed. And like that training, to be honest,
Was it the guy from the Terminator as well?
who
No.
The guy who looks like an action hero version of Quentin Tarantino.
are we talking about? The director?
Oh, directors. I don't know.
Yeah. Director's got up until recently he had like a 3-foot beard.
No, I don't know.
But yeah, and like what I'm saying is that training could have also been for. That looks much more like Metal Gear Solid type training than anything you'd expect to see Moon Knight doing. I don't know. I just assumed it. I assumed it was bullshit.
Moon Knight's also a mercenary.
I don't think that's the route they're going with.
Did you
it,
read
though.
the Shalvey run on that? I think everybody did.
I read a couple of issues of it. Yeah.
I would have read it. I would have read Finch's stuff in about 05, 06, and then I would have sporadically read Moon Knight kind of say a few bits before that and Where Else by Night and stuff.
So I mean, what I love this show to be is just like 6 episodes. Let's just do the Shalvey run, and one in there is rescuing a kidnapped kid, and they just did the raid for the comic book, and it's just a fight up a building, and it's a cool comic, very like nice, clean, just good layout. The fight flows.
It'd be
beautifully, yeah.
it'd be strange for that to leak so far ahead of time, though.
What?
True.
If that was
The fight footage.
training footage, yeah, like that's.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah,
Anyways, definitely in favor of him as Moon Knight.
I think so too.
Content with that. We had Craven being cast this week.
Yes, kick-ass, right?
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Tyler something.
Taylor.
I think, or
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
The guy's a great actor. Fair.
He's great. Yeah.
Nocturnal Animals. He can do it. He's an asshole in that.
It's a standalone Craven the Hunter movie.
I'm not sure I'm into that, to be honest, as a concept.
They're really Sony. I mean, there's been stories forever that Sony really wants to do Sinister Six. Yeah.
So bizarre.
It makes sense though when you think about it, because they've got one of the biggest characters in Marvel. But in terms of heroes, that's all they have. But then they've got this entire rogues gallery. and
Yeah.
it's quite a famous, popular rogues gallery. So it makes sense to
Try
make
and
to
capitalize.
make stuff out of those
That's
properties.
the thing that makes perfect sense. What? It's just a phrase. Oh, they really want to. I don't think they really want to. I think they're going to make use of the things they have available to them. I think they wish they had the Avengers. You know what I mean?
But that's what I mean. Like they that's what they have. They've got Spider-Man, but then they have his entire rogues gallery. You know.
Yeah. But you have to. You're forced to.
They're making Spider-Woman as well, though.
They're making Spider-Woman as well.
Yeah, like Olivia Wilde is directing Spider-Woman, isn't she?
Oh wow. Well, she broke Jason Sudeikis' heart. So. What about
Did she break his heart?
Yes. What
Do they have
about
2 kids together?
Yeah, she's with Harry Styles now.
I mean, that makes sense.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
I think they're going to do a silk thing as well, I believe. So
Obviously, Sony must have some sort of thing that kind of like any character that had debuted in a Spider-Man comic is they have the rights to, right?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Do they have the rights to the Punisher initially appear in Spider-Man first?
Well, they sold. Who made the Punisher movie? That was
Lionsgate, wasn't it?
I did hear, and I don't know if it's true, but I only heard it this week, and it makes sense. The end of Spider-Man 2.
Or Tobey Maguire or Andrew Garfield?
Maguire.
Okay.
The end of Spider-Man 2. Tom Jane's stunt person from Punisher is in the last frame of Spider-Man 2. And the idea being was that it was supposed to be Tom Jane in the shot because they wanted to set up a Tom Jane Spider-Man for the next film. But essentially, there's a character in there who looks exactly like Tom Jane's Punisher, and it's because it was played by his stunt person, and the point was to set up a Spider-Man Punisher movie.
I'm gonna look into that.
So I wonder, do they own...
Tonight, Kev's going to dream about Tom Jane being mean to him.
He looks like Christopher Lambert. No, Tom Jane would never be mean to me. You shut your filthy mouth.
But I guess if
I'm his only fan.
if Netflix made Daredevil and Punisher, those rights have now reverted again. So who owned Daredevil when Affleck was in it?
20th Century Fox.
That was Fox. So if it went Fox, it expired with Fox, went to Netflix. But then does that mean Thomas Jane was with, or like Thomas Jane's Punisher, was that with Sony or was that with Fox? Because that reverted to Netflix. Well, no, it reverted to Marvel and then they sold it to Netflix. So who has it now?
So, but my question, what I was kind of leading to, we just assumed that Sony owned the rights to Spider-Man and any character that has debuted in a Spider-Man comic. It's the same as 20th Century Fox was with X-Men. That's why they used to start introducing like characters that they had planned to use in X-Men storylines in other books, so they weren't necessarily debut characters in the X-Men universe. So if they wanted to use them for other stuff, they could. It could have been, say, X-23, for example, could have first featured in a kind of Avengers book and then would have been in a X-Men storyline. So I'm just thinking, if Sony have a similar thing where it's like any character that was debuted in a Spider-Man book, what character would you like to see instead?
From the Spider-Man canon.
Yeah, like kind of like, because I'd imagine the Destroyer the Destroyer was in Spider-Man, but I don't know if he debuted in Spider-Man originally. He probably didn't. He was probably more post-war.
Hobgoblin is one I'm like, okay, this is a guy that like got himself some goblin tech and just made himself a mercenary, and depending on which version you've got on it, you know, he's just like a soldier of fortune trying to make some money, or he's trying to be a hero with a bad guy's tech. So I think there's room to do either.
That's
with
great.
That.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking of. Like, I'd like to see like something like that for sure.
You know, like even the fact that like at a certain point Hobgoblin is threatened by Green Goblin because you've stolen my shit, and there's an enmity there.
Didn't one of the websites report this week that Willem Dafoe potentially could be the villain in the next Spider-Man movie?
For is it
No Way Home?
No Way Home? Yeah.
Well, the story is that they've brought everybody back for some sort of cameo. I really think what this film is setting up is taking Tom Holland out of the MCU. That's why it's called No Way Home. I think
I
that
don't like it.
I think that's the point.
No.
Is, I mean, if you look at the fact that what they've established with WandaVision and that the Doctor Strange film is called Multiverse of Madness, and Doctor Strange is going to be in No Way Home. I think they're essentially going to do a sort of Spider-Verse, but live action with Tom Holland, and it's going to end with him being in
Stuck somewhere else.
a universe that looks like the MCU one, but isn't, maybe. I think that's the point.
It's going to end like the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s. It's going to have a Madam Web thing that just
Yeah.
goes nowhere, Fucking hell. I remember that as a kid.
That feels like Sony fucking it up. But
Pretty much. But Disney are just like, we're going to do our thing. We're going to make it
we're
great.
taking our
good
ball
luck.
and going home.
Yeah.
So just to keep us moving, the Eternals trailer happened this week.
Was that this week?
Yeah. It was like Monday or Tuesday.
Was that this week?
Yeah, I know.
Jesus
I was
Christ.
surprised as well. I was putting my list together and I was
This was
like,
the longest
oh, shit.
week ever.
It was rough. Yeah.
Yeah, Eternals was Monday.
Oh my god.
I definitely have more grey hairs.
I really like it. I saw somebody refer to it as the century-spanning film, The Eternals, and that worried me because I wanted. I mean, there's ways to do it as a Highlander thing with sort of flashbacks, I guess, but it's like I don't want to follow a narrative through a long period of time. I want to like just get us into the MCU. We're here and now. We can do some little flashbacks. We can establish them at the start of the film, at the beginning of humanity. Let's just get to the point where it matters for the MCU.
Question.
You know what I mean?
Question.
Go on.
So you've obviously seen the memes of the Eternals
Matt
looking
LeBlanc.
Yes, Matt
Sorry.
LeBlanc. The Eternal, like it was like I saw one where it was like a scene from one of the Spider-Man Tobey Maguire movies where it's just like Thanos wipes out half the world and like it's like the Eternals are just looking the other direction, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of memes like that. But I was gonna say, like, will this be set before or after? Because they do mention the Avengers, don't they?
They mention it in that moment at the end, yeah.
But that was like I felt like that was like a final scene in the movie. Sorry, Brian.
The present day part will be set after Endgame, I'd imagine. But it's going to cut through events, kind of millennia.
Spanning time.
Yeah, but I think the present day part is post Endgame. Yeah.
Okay. The trailer doesn't give you a lot in terms of storyline as such, but I like that.
There's an official synopsis though that kind of points where it's going.
I think if you've, I got
saw
the John
that.
Romita illustrated. Is it Gaiman? It's internal issues amongst immortals, really, isn't it? Whether or not to interfere, whether or not to rule the planet, whether or not
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
after a couple of millennia of watching us fall fucking under. Let's
Jim
just fucking
Starlin
relax.
said a couple of years ago that there was going to be a young Thanos in the film. That'll be interesting.
And there's concept art for that.
There's concept art for it too as well. Yeah.
We've seen that. He's very lean. What is funny to me is like every time you see it will be, I don't know, it's a TV trope I spot where like every time they want to do a flashback to like a character who's much younger, like Dexter's the worst for it. If you ever watch Dexter, it's just
Michael C. Hall?
it's just terrible long wigs, just terrible wigs. Oh, he's younger, shitty hair, so I like the idea of young Thanos just having a bad wig.
yeah, imagine. Yeah. Look, Eternals, I'm up for it, I don't know, like, I've definitely have, like, and I'm rewatching, like I said, the MCU and stuff, and I love it, I really do love it. Even, like, movies that I previously would have kind of said were stinkers, it's like, I actually, going back, kind of appreciate aspects of them a lot more, and I have a lot of faith in these movies.
I think it's quite funny that when they first said they were going to make this, we were all like, why? Like, we don't want this. Like, who?
Yeah.
Like, they've picked such a C tier kind of
obscure.
Yeah, and then we kind of heard they were casting them, and we're like, okay, that cast is kind of cool. And then we saw some concept art, and we were just like, we're still kind of saying, why? And now we're so starved for
I know,
for any kind of MCU stuff. We're like, give it to me, I want it now. It's it's played out very, very well for them in the sense that it's been delayed twice, and people have gone from kind of saying, no interest. This is not where
So
this is not
true.
this is not where we
Yeah.
want the MCU to head next. To then going, Jesus Christ, I can't wait to see where it's heading next and how they play into it. It's been very, very lucky for them in a very
I think
random
they
way.
did a great job as well with that trailer, because I didn't know what tone to expect going into it. Going into an Eternals movie, I had no idea what I was going to expect, and I was really excited. Though the music worked, it had a real grand sense of scale. I was really happy. I was surprised that I was like, the music worked well. The shots were really epic.
Also, like this was initially going to be released before Chloe Zhao had won an Oscar, but now by the time it's
Yeah.
coming out, they can say, you know, Oscar winning director. Whereas I think this was originally due November last year.
yeah.
So yeah, it's played out really well for them.
And it was also, you know, it was written, built, conceived, and supposed to be released before any of the events of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, WandaVision. So, or Black Widow was supposed to have been out before it.
Yeah.
So, and I suppose Black Widow will still be out before it. It's just curious to... Black Widow's in a couple of weeks then, isn't it?
July, I think.
I'm just curious to see how both of those films fare, given that the shows that were supposed to come out after. Not that how they'd fare, but just curious to see what Easter eggs were being laid ahead of the TV.
I think. It's probably too big a spoiler, so maybe I shouldn't say.
About what, Eternals?
Yeah,
Do we know it?
I don't know.
Are you hypothesizing this?
Let's leave it out. So let's leave it out. So
I think they have potentially put a hint into Endgame.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Potentially.
Okay, fair. That's okay, fair.
Also out this week, trailer wise, I'm going to move through 3 short ones quickly. I saw a trailer for The Duke, which is Jim Broadbent, Helen Mirren about a painting heist in the 60s. Looks fun. It's got good reviews. I do like these. Not to undersell it, but like, yeah, I like a small British movie that, you know, it's like your Full Monty kind of thing. You know, it's just, it gets released. It's decent. I like that cast. Like, he's a guy who decides to steal a painting of one of the royal family and ransom it back to the government for money to be donated to the war widows, veterans, pensions charities. And then, like, you can see very clearly from the trailer, there's a trial around. He clearly gets caught. And
What's it called? What's
the Duke. The painting of the
Duke,
Duke
okay.
gets stolen, and they're trying to decide whether or not he's a criminal or whether or not he's a social change activist or whether or not he should be. And it looks fun. It looks funny. Hopefully they haven't just cut the trailer that way and it's a tragedy. But there's the Duke. Also, there's a trailer for Dan Brown's The Lost Symbol, which is on Peacock, and looks like they're trying to do the TV Jack Ryan for Tom Hanks's Robert Langdon character. And I don't know if you guys watched The Da Vinci Code or
I think I actually have.
Hell. What were the 2 after that? There's 3 of those.
Angel and
films.
Demons.
Angel and Inferno.
I've never watched those ones though.
They got a trilogy out of that.
Very popular books at the time though.
Poor Audrey
Very
Tattoo.
popular books.
Poor Audrey Tattoo.
Poor. I do think about that, especially when you see the second movie and they cast someone who's a bit like Audrey Tattoo to play a similar sidekick character. She was coming off of Amelie. That was supposed to be her break into Hollywood. It was touted as her moving into American film.
And what happened to her?
It was a shit film, and she didn't really get. I'm probably wrong, but she. You didn't see much of her crossover after that fact. She did the French film Priceless.
Yes, I think.
That was good fun, but it's set in Washington. It's National Treasure meets The Da Vinci Code meets Jack Ryan.
Sign Kev up.
Yes, I love National Treasure. What's this called?
This is The Lost Symbol. So it's how did Robert Langdon get
No, I thought you said
the origins of Robert Langdon.
I thought you said Dan Brown. I was thinking of a man who does all the illusions.
Darren Brown.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
I mean, I've enjoyed a Darren Brown
Laugh
show
at me.
from time to time. The Push was pretty good.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Also on the list is The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt. That looks a little like Tenet, oddly enough. It looks like Tenet from the bad guy's point of view. People travelling through time to fight a war. Did you guys watch that trailer?
I saw the posters for it, and I don't know, I just wasn't really kind of grabbed by it. I think Brian put me off Chris Pratt, even though me and Chris Pratt morally, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally are the same person. And physically.
Careful there, Kev.
No, we're not. He's a nutbag. He's a nutbag. We're not. Although,
Kevin also attends a church that funds gay conversion.
I absolutely do not.
Yeah.
I don't attend any church.
No.
But I was going to say, he did offer his truck to help people move, I think, at one stage. That was kind of nice.
Yeah, look, I don't want to get into the pros and cons of Chris Pratt. Let's just talk about the movie.
That was a joke.
I will forever remember walking into the art and hobby shop to buy some paints when we found out that him and his first wife had broken up and he was with that Schwarzenegger person.
Yeah.
I heard the two girls at the counter going, "She's after stealing Chris Pratt from her, the little bitch." I was like, is this... What's her name? Kathy Schwarzenegger? Is this her fault or is this Chris Pratt after...
Yeah, I think it's... to be honest, like... I like Chris Pratt. I think I like Chris Pratt when he's acting and stuff. He's just he's like a kind of a Will Ferrell type of character in terms of he's funny. I like him. Blah blah blah. However, and I don't know anything. Brian does tell me stuff, and to be honest, when I saw the trailer for it, I was like meh. Or the poster for the War Tomorrow, I wasn't really too keen. Just whatever. Yeah. But I was gonna say when he did leave, because it was some what was his previous wife's name? Something Mia.
Anna Faris.
I did think that was so shitty because it's just like she was good enough for you when you were a B-lister and now you're this A-lister and you're off with bloody, Schwarzenegger's daughter. And I just think like it's a big reflection of him, to be honest, than anything to do with that poor woman,
I don't know. I don't know. You never know the ins and outs of a person's relationship. The issue we would have with Chris is his political and religious associations after the fact. This movie looks like fine B-movie sci-fi fodder. It might be good fun. I will probably watch it. The thing I was going to say was that it has Edge of Tomorrow.
I just sent you a screenshot
aliens.
That when I first scrolled on YouTube and saw the trailer was posted, I could have sworn it was Tom Cruise from Edge of Tomorrow.
Wow, yeah. Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, it doesn't even look like him. It's this weird.
It is odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's a stuntman and they've face replaced his head on it.
He looks like a little bit. He looks like a mixture of Luke Evans and.
He finally remembered Luke Evans' name.
Yes,
He's always got Luke Evans on the brain.
I
Luke
love
Evans
Luke
and Tom
Evans.
Yeah, we know. We know.
Yeah, I know. Luke Evans and also my other kind of man crush. It's like I have like one I have a man crush. I have many. Your man Patrick. Oh God, why can't I think of his name? Evil guy in Aquaman 2. Night Owl in Watchmen.
Patrick Wilson.
Yeah, he looks like a mixture between those two.
He always looked a bit like Patrick Wilson. I've seen there's even, I think it's the screenshot or poster with Jennifer Lawrence and him for Passengers, and he looks like Patrick Wilson on that. And I think Patrick Wilson is in a movie also called Passengers, but it's about something different also.
I do like Patrick Wilson.
One of my favorite lines in Kimmy Schmidt is when Titus gets drunk, and I think it's Josh Charles from The Good Wife, and Titus after getting drunk and he gets more and more masculine, and he just says something along the lines of, I can't remember how he says something, and it's like, "You Patrick Wilson looking motherfucker." But he says it with such like animosity. Titus is a brilliant character.
Oh, he's phenomenal. Yeah.
The aliens suffer from the Edge of Tomorrow aliens thing to me, where they're just like amorphous mess of tentacles that you can't see what the fuck is happening. And I was watching this trailer thinking, it reminded me of just CG special effects allow for such complexity that sometimes clarity gets lost. And
less is more.
If you think about the practical alien horde of non-human monsters that people were fighting in Starship Troopers, and how clear they were in terms of their silhouette, Those are like those soldier ant monsters that had this clear, like hooked look to them. Like they were very clear, very threatening, very alien looking creatures. Whereas Edge of Tomorrow and this, by the look of it, is just a knot of tentacles, and it's like it's hard to.
Yeah, I do think it's to Edge of Tomorrow's detriment that it does that. But you could also make the case that Edge of Tomorrow really isn't about the aliens. It's about the loop and how he keeps learning and adapting. But I do think it is a weak point. But I think it was also not the focus of the movie. And I think
that's why Edge of Tomorrow gets away with it as well as it does. Is that the aliens aren't the focus? It's his experience of the war.
Yeah.
Speaking of Edge of Tomorrow, Emily Blunt is obviously amazing in it, but her husband John
Krasinski, Jack Ryan,
he said that
Robert Langdon, Tom Hanks, Audrey Tautou.
If he had been offered Mr. Fantastic, he said hell yes, he would love to do it.
Well, I don't even think that was a past tense type of thing. I think that's even sort of like if they still come at me and say, "Do you want to be Mr. Fantastic?"
They obviously they're going to do it. They're going to do it. Right?
Emily Blunt has said the exact opposite, though, just this week or last week.
But Emily Blunt has an interview where she said the worst thing in the world for me would be to be in some sci-fi blockbuster as a spear carrier for Tom Cruise. And then she did The Edge of Tomorrow. So
is that true?
Let's see where the
I mean, like it must be so hard for these actors, like because they're getting these questions.
She said something
constantly.
stupid when she was 20, and
that's what I mean.
It's
like,
not even
like,
that stupid.
No, it's not stupid. It's like, but her opinion can change, like
Yeah, but
and she shouldn't be criticized on it.
But I think she said quite recently that she doesn't want. She was talking about how she ended up not being Black Widow, and then she said that she also just doesn't want to do one of these movies quite explicitly,
But then she's in the fucking Jungle Cruise.
This is the thing. Like, I think sometimes it's maybe easier to deflect something by saying, "Yeah, I'd love to," and then just because there's a similar thing with Andrew Garfield. He's promoting something at the moment, and every question he's getting asked is he
Spider-Man.
in this? And you can see he's getting frustrated. And like the thing is, normally in these kind of junkets, their publicist is just off camera, and they can kind of shut it down within minutes. But they're doing all these interviews over Zoom now, and they don't have the same. Yeah. They don't have the same kind of protection from the publicist, and even if the interviewer is told like minutes beforehand, look, just don't bring this stuff up. They always shoot their shot. They always got to ask, which is crazy because it's like he's been asked this 100 times. Do you really think he's just going to tell you? Like they've told everybody else that they're not. But
do you remember? There's an interview with Kathleen Kennedy where a guy says, "So who's the main villain in the Rise of the Skywalker?" And Kathleen Kennedy goes, "What makes you think I would answer that?" And his response is, "Because in 1999 I asked George Lucas who the Phantom Menace was, and he said Emperor Palpatine."
No way.
Because he just asked the question, she goes, "Oh, it's Emperor Palpatine."
That's hilarious. Yeah, like but the likes of Emily, like who
shoot
knows?
Your shot, like.
But like, who knows? Like,
but what I'm saying is, I think it's probably easier to deflect by giving a positive answer and shut it down because
I understand that. Yeah.
The second you say no, you got to kind of justify your no, and then you end up saying something that bites you in the ass 2 weeks or a year later or something. But you say, "Oh, I'd love to, but I don't know."
It was like when you're a kid with your parents. Hey, can I get this or I do this? It's like, well, I'll think about it, and it's like you're not saying no categorically, and it's like you walk away going like, I'm not gonna attempt it. I'm gonna let them think about it, and then you never get a dog.
Whatever you might think, Emily, we would love to see you in a Fantastic Four movie. We would love to see John there with you. You guys could be the anchor of a whole new wing of Marvel. It'd be great to see, but at the same time, we can understand why you wouldn't.
And we're going to love ye anyways.
That's it. Other trailer came out was Gunpowder Milkshake. Karen Gillan, Lena Headey, Michelle Yeoh, Angela Bassett, Paul Giamatti, kind of John Wick, assassin, save the kid. Kind of like the Transporter, I guess. Action movie looking
kind of like Shoot 'em Up.
I was going to say Paul Giamatti makes this from the universe of Shoot 'em Up all of a sudden, and I want Clive Owen.
Paul Giamatti is a funny one.
I did not like Shoot 'em Up. I was so disappointed.
It was disappointing. I think, did we see that in the cinema together, Brian? Maybe we didn't.
Can't remember.
I enjoyed Shoot 'em Up. But I can see why I remember you showing me the storyboards for that. There was like an animatic.
Maybe if you guys know, maybe not. But I was going to say, Paul Giamatti is just one of these guys who does complete tripe, but good tripe sometimes, and then does like real good artsy. He kind of has the balance. You know, he can be Rhino and ridiculous looking, and then he can do like Sideways, or or whatever. It's like, I like that. I like that Paul Giamatti is kind of just like, yeah, it's whatever. You know, I can do this, this, and this, and it's fine. It looks good. I like it. Fine. Like, look, it's an action movie. I don't need more than that. It's fine.
It's a fine looking trailer. I hope the rest of it holds together. Like, I want to have fun with these things. I am sick of from the people that brought you John Wick. Here's some more punch kicking.
She was Nebula in MCU, and she was in the Jumanji. I don't know if she was in the second one because I haven't seen the second.
She's in the 2 Jumanji movies. She's Amy Pond in Doctor Who. Is where we met Karen Gillan first.
I don't watch that because I have taste. But she was great in. She's been great in lots of things I've watched her in. Like, I love Jumanji. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I think the films I've seen her in haven't given her the room to do as much stuff as she's done in, episodes of Doctor Who. Which, whatever you might think about the quality or whatnot of each episode, they gave her a lot of room to do, much more dramatic stuff rather than little action sequences in Jumanji. As part of an ensemble, you know what I mean? I'm trying to. Am I making myself clear? I guess like she was able to be featured a lot in something like Doctor Who over 3 seasons, whereas you become part of an ensemble in something like Guardians of the Galaxy and whatever, and you don't necessarily get your time to shine. So hopefully this is this for Karen.
But she was very good in MCU. But I think, but I think she proves that she's a really competent actor. I think she's great, but yeah.
I'm happy that action movies there's almost a higher pedigree now that they kind of have to match, because action scenes and things for so long were quite poor, and now there's this. It's cool that there's like almost this stable and benchmark for stunts, because that there's this kind of stable and benchmark for stunts now, and what they need really is a kind of a plot or a premise that kind of matches up to it. Got to be fun at the end of the day. Like, I think it really was kind of diminishing returns for Wick 2 and 3. I don't dislike them, but they're not the same. So I like the fact that we've got the potential for much better action sequences, but you still need a fun story. It doesn't need to be highbrow. It just needs to be engaging.
Like nobody.
Yeah, it needs to pull you in.
One of the points, because nobody kind of falls into that as well.
I've not watched it yet though.
One of the points that you made to me, Brian, about why John Wick is as good as it is that Keanu Reeves has at this point spent 20 years basically becoming a stuntman who knows his martial arts, and he can be in such a high percentage of the fights, and they can do things with him and 3 other stuntmen that you can't do with him and Ruby Rose.
It's one of the I think one of the things that really stood out for me was he's got an extended fight scene with Common. And it just doesn't look in 2, and it just doesn't look good because he can't do the same things in the scene because Common hasn't had the same extent of training, and it's quite an extended fight, and Common's made out to be Wick's equal, and if that's the case, then it should be a high point of the franchise, and instead it doesn't compared to any single scene in the first film. And I think as well there was I'm going to look up his name quickly, but there's a guy that was he's a model and a stunt. he's in the episode of Barry where Barry goes to kill the guy, and there's a kid, and the kid is this little fairy.
The Taekwondo guy.
But this guy, he was a model. He's a stuntman. He was also a Taekwondo practitioner for years. But he plays one of the new agents in The Matrix Reloaded, and then he is in John Wick. He's in the first John Wick film, and he's kind of like he's the only person in John Wick 1 that is somewhere on Wick's level, and like that works because they've got this guy who can kind of go toe to toe, and then
and that's where nobody falls down, and I'm afraid Gunpowder Milkshake will fall down, is Bob Odenkirk nor Karen Gillan of the same sort of pedigree.
Daniel Bernhardt is the guy's name.
Odenkirk did a great job turning to this, but it's still a case of like, it's not.
And the thing is,
it's not, I'm not, and especially talking like this as if you can do any, like I can't do any fucking better, you know. But
a stunt team can make an actor look great. So like they could have had Common with a stunt team, and they could have made Common look great. But when it's one-on-one, it doesn't work as well. Especially when the selling point of the movie is, look how convincing and capable, you know, the actor looks, and then to kind of, you know, not be able to recreate that experience.
So I'm going to keep us moving forward, and I'm going to send you something and ask you to listen to it. I've got 2 pieces of audio. I'm going to factor them in. Off the back of last week's episode, I was talking to 2 people that had never watched Highlander and chose to watch Highlander. So I'm going to send you this. I'm going to insert it into the episode. This is Yuki's reaction to Highlander. She did not enjoy this movie.
Okay, first I'm going to preface this and say that I don't think this is an awful movie, but I don't understand why it was so big and how it spawned so many spin-offs. Like, obviously, Christopher Lambert's such a weird choice. He has a few well-practiced lines back in his Scottish days where he puts on the Scottish accent. But then, like, 10 years after he's expelled from his little Scottish village, he just drops his accent. And also, can we discuss how he's on the battlefield and Clancy Brown, you know, obviously is saying, "Leave him to me." But he's on the battlefield. Literally, his arms are wide open. He's got his sword and he's got his shield and he's like, fight me, fight me. You could literally just stab people, dude. It's a battle. No one will get angry at you if you just randomly stab someone. You don't have to wait for someone to stab you like Clancy Brown did. There are so many parts of this movie that made me wonder how anyone involved in it saw it and said, yeah, this is definitely a movie I'm proud to put my name on. And it's probably really mean. But I mean, Christopher Lambert is a Frenchman who can't lose his French accent. He's playing a Scottish lord. And Sean Connery is a Scotsman who can't lose his Scottish accent. And he's playing an Egyptian who is currently at the Spanish king's court. At one point, Christopher Lambert says to Sean Connery, "You look like a haggis." And Sean Connery, in all of his Scottish glory, goes, "A haggis? What is a haggis?" The best part of the movie was probably Clancy Brown. Because he was, obviously he's a fantastic actor. He is so great at being bad. And Christopher Lambert is just really, really bad. Anyways, that is my short take on Highlander, and I just don't understand what happened.
Odd. I've never heard a criticism of Highlander before.
So this is Chris, who had never seen it. He enjoyed it a lot.
Hey lads, how's it going? This is Chris from Chicago, long-time listener, first-time caller. I sat down with a few friends and watched Highlander the other night after hearing you guys talk about it. Obviously, I'd heard the name of the movie. I was going into it, I was vaguely aware that it was about some degree of immortality. I knew that there could only be one. But we sat down and watched it. We had a great time. It aged really well. You know, there wasn't anything. Sometimes when you're trying to like borrow nostalgia off other people's, movies that they love, you can be kind of watching it and it doesn't really quite hold up if you hadn't seen it, growing up. But I thought it looked great. I thought the storyline was a lot of fun. It had this cool like A-B plot line where, we were, back in the Moors and then in modern day times. That was kind of fun to keep things interesting. My favorite bit of it was the Kurgan. He was my favorite bad guy I think that I've had in a long time. I do like a good punk rock bad guy. It made me think of the whole squad from Lost Boys. There's kind of some similarities there. And the soundtrack going along well with that was cool. I didn't know there can be only one was a catchphrase. I assumed that was only said one time in the movie, and then on the sort of fourth time they were saying it, I was like, okay, this comes up a lot. Sean Connery was great. My favorite bit was sort of Sean with zero effort to hide his Scottish accent, pretending not to know what haggis was. That was good. It wasn't immediately clear to me what the quickening was. That was something that maybe, I don't know, I guess if you've watched it a bunch of times, you sort of know. I think they kind of do a better job of explaining it at the end. But I did go through the entire movie thinking that the quickening was an ability to run faster, because they have a weird scene with the deer where they're sort of looking at it for a couple of seconds, and then Sean Connery just gets him to bolt down the beach, and then they have a little swim together. But it didn't really explain too much, what the quickening was. And then at the end, I guess it's maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it's a sort of a unity, a zenness with the rest of the universe. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but definitely for the first couple of hour or so, we thought it was a ability to sprint quite quickly. Heather was pretty good. There was one scene where Sean Connery is getting killed by the Kurgan, and Heather's just doing an awful lot of screaming in the background. I think if it was made today, Heather might put up a bit more of a fight, but to be honest, she's just screaming as the entire castle comes down around her, not running away, not doing much. But I mean, overall, it was great. I had a blast. Good recommendation. And yeah, P.S. Fuck Speed Racer. I hate that fucking movie. Absolute waste of my time. Stick to your guns, Kev. And yeah, if just because you can make an homage to that kind of level of anime doesn't mean that you should do it. I can't get that time back, but I appreciate the recommendation for Highlander. Thanks very much.
Yes!
We'll just cut that part there, the last 30
Yes! you go fuck yourselves. My brother thought you were trolling me. Fucking Chris knows his shit.
Okay, so
Who wants to live?
So we have two similar takes on the Highlander with similar points of interest. Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess, if you really want to tear the movie apart and look at the bad as bad, I guess you can.
I will say this about the guys' opinions. Both of them, they're not wrong.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying another way. I mean,
yeah. I love Highlander, but it's definitely problematic in parts. And dated.
The Haggis scene, there's no way they didn't know that this is fucking funny, having Sean Connery in a Scottish accent pretend to not know what haggis is.
That's almost definitely a very knowing joke.
Yeah.
It would have to be. Even if they didn't know, he would have said, guys, this is a bit absurd. I'm clearly Scottish. I'm not making any effort to mask my accent here. We're in the Highlands and I'm going, what's haggis? So, yeah, they absolutely know. They'd have to.
I had forgotten about the scene with the deer on the beach. That is an odd moment, and I do remember thinking, like, what is the implied power or oneness with nature that an immortal has that we don't, or something, like, what's he training him to feel there?
I think it's more kind of the quickening is shared, kind of, it's a force of nature, isn't it? That's probably what it's implying. I don't know.
Well, like a quickening is a sort of a sensation, a feeling. So, like that.
Thanks to the guys for actually watching Highlander and sending us their opinions. Although one, not wrong.
No, that's what we want. We want the discussion. Like, so, what do you think it is about Highlander that made it connect to the point that it expanded out into 5 movies, 2 TV series, cartoons?
I think something that you can't really ignore is
nerdy white guys.
There's a sentimentality to it. There's a romance and a sentimentality to it that people quite like. That there's a big crossover appeal there between, it's quite tragic where he's got this kind of ideal happy life at the start, and kind of loses it all. Like there's a romanticism to all of that, and then to watch him throughout the ages to kind of save a young girl's life, and then in the present day for her to be older than him, but to effectively be his daughter. Like there's a kind of a tragedy. There's a very romantic tragedy that is kind of weaved throughout the whole thing, that, like, regardless of how absurd or silly the film gets, it does have this quite relatable sadness to it that I think I know when I watched it the first time, I really connected. I was quite young when I saw it, but I really connected with it. I was like, that's really sad, and that, like, maybe it's overly sentimental or stuff, but people can sort of empathize with that. I think that's part of what keeps it grounded in a way, almost. As silly as the concept is, that's something that we can all imagine, that sort of loss, that kind of sadness. I think that does actually help.
The pros and cons of immortality, isn't it?
Yeah, I think,
and it's probably the first time we were faced with that.
Yeah, I think that is something that people can connect with, you know.
And I think that that kind of Celtic era of the movie and stuff is on par with the likes of Rob Roy and Braveheart. It's excellent.
Yeah, there's stuff in there, like, as you say it, and make me think about it in a little more in-depth and less glib way. Like, when it's one film released and you're looking at just the one, before anything else that comes after it, the concept of immortality, the presentation of it as if it's a double-edged sword, I don't know that we'd seen that previously. You've got the Queen score as well. Like, Queen they must have been at their height in 86, right?
Yeah, because it would have been around at the same time as the charity song thing.
Live Aid.
Yes.
There's the element as well of, like, that song is just that question, who wants to live forever? And you're sitting in a room going, like, everybody in their heads like, I want to live forever, and this thing is going, no, you don't, and here's why.
I'd live forever.
A guy will come at you with a sword.
No, I'd live forever if I could get my kind of consciousness transported into a robot body.
There is, as you say, the sadness thing as well of, like, there's definitely a scene where I'm trying to remember the movie, where Christopher Lambert meets another immortal on neutral ground, and they have a chat, and they're just sort of like, we don't want to kill each other. Why is this still going on? Why are we doing this? And it's just this sort of ambiguity as to what this challenge or this thing is, and why it's whittling them down over the millennia.
Would you be upset at all if he was involved in the I know it's a remake, but if he had some sort of little cameo or something?
I wouldn't be upset if he had a cameo, but, like, what would that be? Would he be the old man who helps run the shop and that he met as a boy, you know? Like, but that brings us back to the conversation we had last week, where it's like, I don't want a beat-for-beat remake of any of these things. Take the concept of immortals with swords and do something else.
I think a big part of the success is, I mean, you could sum it up in, you know, a few words. That's essentially, it was the 80s. But it's the time it was in the 80s as well. Like, it was 86. Queen had done that show at Wembley, which was fucking huge. I think that was around the same time. And it's about 5 years after MTV was first on the scene. Like, sure. you can't really ignore the impact MTV had. So it was about 5 years after MTV came on the scene. And the guy who directed it was a music video director. He directed videos for almost everybody in the 80s. He directed videos for Spandau Ballet, Duran Duran, Elton John, Billy Joel. So almost everything people were seeing on MTV, which was this massive cultural thing, he brought that language to a film.
And he made a music video for that Queen song.
Exactly. So
with Christopher Lambert fighting Freddie Mercury with a sword.
You've essentially got, you know, this cultural phenomenon that MTV was, and now you've got a film version of it in terms of the visuals. Because, I mean, the visuals do very much look like an 80s music video. And you've got a premise that, you know, as silly and as absurd as it gets, is kind of fun. And I think that's why it's dated, but it's also still kind of fun. I think it's all those things kind of come together. That's what I think. So I think that's my take.
I think that's a nice evaluation and a good response to Yuki, who is sort of like, I have a familiarity with Yuki's watching habits. You know, she watches a wide range of garbage and enjoys the hell out of it.
Did Yuki like Speed Racer? Yuki, if you're listening, did you like Speed Racer?
Well, we can find out.
Yes, I'd be interested to know.
Like, they do watch, like, they watch a wide range of different things anyway.
But so we're kind of talking about the guy's opinions and stuff, but like Yuki, 100%, like everything she's saying is right, but it's also like they're things I love, you know. Yeah. But like, I like trash. That's why I hang out
So-
with you guys.
Oh. Well, then that kind of brings us very naturally onto Mark Wahlberg's trailer for Infinite, which is very Highlandery.
It's very Highlandery.
So this
Super
is Mark Wahlberg, Chiwetel Ejiofor, who is always great. Brings this just has a presence on film. You know, he owns a room when he walks into it, which is.
Especially if you're an interrogator.
And it opens with him interrogating Mark Wahlberg, trying to kickstart some latent past life memories through personal possessions from dead people, I guess. There's a samurai sword on the table. It's clearly got some Highlander vibes. This is you are an infinite. If you can tap into your past lives, you can do this, that, and the other. I guess the question is that a there can be only one immortal kind of thing, or is it like a what dreams may come kind of reincarnation thing?
Well, the thing with the past life items, like that's a sort of a Buddhist kind of thing, in that like that's how they determine when someone's been reincarnated, is that they present you with a few toys from your childhood, and then so that's where it's kind of getting that thing.
Yeah, I think it's associated with the selection of the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
How many movies do we have to watch where Mark Wahlberg carves things into his torso?
Has he done that before?
Fear with Reese Witherspoon. She plays a character called Nicole, and he carves her name into his chest.
I mean, 2?
That's too many.
I don't know what to think about this trailer, other than, because there's not a huge amount in it. We've got somebody who's, I guess, our antagonist. We've got a protagonist. We have the concept of immortality, or at least reincarnation. And then I don't know what the movie's going to be about. Like, it's just interesting that the Highlander is in the cultural mindset again, or Highlander-like things are popping their way into
Strange, yeah.
media with Old Guard as well.
I do like, kind of obviously Mark Wahlberg. I wouldn't be the greatest fan of him maybe outside of the movie world and stuff. I do think, though, he's cleaned up his act a lot, However, what I would say...
Exactly. He's cleaned up the perception of his act.
Yeah, probably.
He's still the guy who wants his criminal record expunged so he can become a cop.
I think he's an asshole.
He's cleaning up his
nice.
he's cleaning up his act so that he can become a cop.
So weird.
There's a
weird.
Wants to become a cop?
He
Yeah.
essentially wants like a concealed carry permit, and he wants to be something else. Like essentially, he wants to be like
A sheriff.
deputized, yeah. And he wants this assault of I think it was a Vietnamese guy that he blinded. He wants it expunged.
It was 2 Asian people I think he assaulted, and one of them kind of just won't take any money from him ever, which I can completely stand with, but like
there's a difference between cleaning up your act and changing your ways, and he's cleaning up his act because he's got
True
some
PR.
But he's got some he's got an ulterior motive for wanting to do it.
That's the curiosity of it. It's such a long
doing
time ago. I can see a place in which I can see a world in which a person looks back on their actions of their youth and goes, I can't believe I did that. I was such a fucking asshole. I'm so remorseful. I'm full of regret. I can't believe I ever did that. Live with that remorse. Be better. Why are you so fixated on clearing your record? It happened.
Yeah.
What
That's awful.
do you want
So
to carry a gun for?
Yeah. But also, it's just like, it's incredibly disrespectful, and it must be like, it's kind of like you did those shitty things, and like, you were definitely a shitty person at that time or whatever, and you were young. It's not an excuse, but if you're remorseful, that's fair and stuff. But now a normal person, I think, if it was me, for example, I would struggle with the fact that I had garnered so much success and I had this lifestyle where I did horrific things like that. Do you know what I mean? But it's not like that. He wants to kind of, he's like, I've made peace with it. Everybody else should abolish that record, It's not good.
That's the curiosity for it. Like, I think in a society, there has to be room for, doing your time serving your sentence, retribution, or what retribution? What's the word I'm looking for? Rehabilitation. Remorse, and whatnot.
Yeah.
There does have to be a way back, especially when somebody does something fucking stupid when they're very fucking young. But I don't know what was in the guy's head. I don't know what's in his head today. I'm not really going to pass a judgment one way or the other. It is weird that he needs, like, it. That's the question. It's like, it happened. Feel the remorse. Be better. Why do you want to wipe it from your record?
He wants it removed from his
Who knows
record.
it
Yeah,
happened?
exactly.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
true.
why
That's
do you
not.
want?
I think that's not truly remorseful, really. You know.
No, it's not. It's not. It's like, I forgive myself. Everybody else should too, and I don't really like that aspect of him. But I do like him in movies, which is unfortunate. But yeah, do you separate the art from the artist? I really struggle with that. Once I learned about Mark Wahlberg, I was disappointed.
See, I was talking to somebody today, this week as well, because we're wandering down this a little bit, and I didn't entirely want to bring it up because I just like to keep this a sort of fun podcast. But the question that she asked, and she emailed it to us, the Endless Cast podcast, theendlesscast@gmail.com, is, has Joss Whedon redeemed himself with the show The Nevers?
No.
And
I've never seen it, so I couldn't comment. I don't know.
I replied, I mean, I don't know that his show is going to make up for his creepy behaviour. And her response was, what creepy behaviour? And I went, what do you think he's redeeming himself for? And she thought Avengers Ultron was why people were down with him.
Oh.
I didn't realize,
or Justice League, rather.
I didn't realize he was working.
The thing is, when I heard the synopsis for The Nevers, I was like, Jesus Christ.
What is it? I don't know anything about it.
I don't even remember like if they've changed it since, but essentially all I heard was Joss Whedon has a show with 3 women and their abilities have something to do with sex work or something. I was like, fucking hell, this guy he's nothing if he's not predictable, you know? And this was, you know, a couple of years ago. This was 3 or 4 years ago. I was just like, fucking hell, like we, you know, his wife has written this letter about him and yet we're still making him make a TV show like this. It's just...
The Nevers is an American drama television series created by Joss Whedon, series produced by HBO. Premise: The Nevers is described as an epic science fiction drama about a gang of Victorian women who find themselves with unusual abilities, relentless enemies, and a mission that might change the world.
And is this show still going on, is it?
Yeah, it just aired.
Cool. Oh, so he's still working. Not that like...
They've removed him from the project before
He
it came
directed
out.
the first 2 episodes, directed episode 5, May 9th, 2021, and aired. Like, he's definitely in the background of it anyway. Yeah, I guess what was interesting to me was that, like, this is a person that didn't even realize there was an issue with Joss Whedon. So I don't know, stuff. As long as he keeps working, he'll probably bury it.
I think Michelle Trachtenberg came out when Charisma Carpenter came out and made a statement about Whedon. So Trachtenberg would have played Buffy's younger sister. I'm not sure how old. I'm not sure how old she was when she was on the show, but she did say a couple of months ago that there was a rule: Joss wasn't allowed to be in the same room as her alone. So
so weird. Anyways, oh god.
His wife came out years ago and said how unfaithful he'd been throughout their marriage. And he blamed it on numerous things. And his apology response that he wrote sometime later was, he was in such a difficult position, being a very powerful person in Hollywood, being like a showrunner on the show. He was in a difficult position and he had all these young women on the show that were always trying to impress him. And it was very difficult for him to keep saying no. And that was his apology.
Oh God, no, guys. Oh,
this was years ago. So
no,
that's fucked. Absolutely fucked. This is a response he made public himself. He was like, he apologized for his behavior and he was like, he had no excuse, but it was very hard. And it was something to the effect that it was very hard to say no, to having, I think he even used the word possibly, like, I think he even used the word like an ingenue, that he'd have these young women that wanted to get close to him because he was the showrunner or he was the writer or director, and just how hard it was for him in that situation, which is just, awful. Fuck him.
I watched Those Who Wish Me Dead with Angelina Jolie, just moving the story directly on. Directed by Taylor Sheridan. The guys, he wrote, I think, Sicario and... what's the TV show?
Yellowstone?
Yellowstone. He's co-creator of Yellowstone.
Okay.
It's fine. It's a smoke jumper. You know, the sort of people that parachute into forest fires to fight fires in the Pacific Northwest of America. Angelina Jolie has been through a trauma where, you know, the fire got out of control, and so she's sent to spend a season just in a fire watch tower. Meanwhile, like a witness protection family are being hunted by Aidan Gillen and Nicholas Holt's hitmen. Every time, you know, I'm always happy to see Aidan Gillen sneering his way through movies.
He's great. He's great. He's always just
He's Aidan Gillen.
He's Aidan Gillen.
Aidan Gillen.
He's one of those actors I don't like because he played a horrible person. You know that kind of way? It's like, it's transferable. Yeah.
I just love that you never know what version of a pirate he's going to be playing that week.
Yeah.
He's just snarling through movies. But it's so weird because I loved him as Carcetti in The Wire. I thought he was great. And then everything after that, he developed this sort of pirate snarl. And it's like season 3 of Game of Thrones.
Louis Walsh was his manager, and Louis Walsh told him he needed a hook.
And he took it literally, and he's got a peg leg to go with it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's like, he meant to pronounce your R's or something.
Somebody had a theory that, you know, the character he's playing in Game of Thrones is this kind of social chameleon, that, you know, he's this kind of low-born person that now finds himself kind of... Yeah, it was just a fun theory that, you know, is he putting that much thought into it, and that, you know, he's
changes his speech.
He's this different person to all these different people at different times that he... Yeah. And is it just...
I kind of thought that's what he was doing, to be honest.
He goes to the north and he gets a bit more snarly.
Yeah, yeah. Or is it just the fact that his appearances were so intermittent that he can't remember what he was last doing?
He couldn't keep consistency. Yeah.
Those Who Wish Me Dead. There's the hitmen. There's the kid on the run, and there's Angelina Jolie. And it takes a while for their stories to interconnect. Mm-hmm. There is a moment all before that where she's just chilling out in the tower, mind her own business, and then she notices a crackle in the air, and then she realizes, oh god, there's about to be a lightning strike, and she leaps off the tower and swings on a rope and falls to the ground. And I remember thinking, that's fucking weird. Why do they make a point of the lightning? Like, what does that even add to anything? And then 15 minutes later, when she finds the kid and goes, we'll go back and we'll call the authorities. They go back to the tower, and the lightning fried all the communication equipment. So now they're stuck on their own. And it's like, you had to create an atmospheric phenomenon to bend the plot to that will.
She could have just spilled her coffee once lightning struck outside. Oh god, it's over the radio.
Honestly, yeah, I mean, we've seen easier radio breaks. Then they run from the tower, encounter a fire. They run back to the tower, encounter the hitmen. They run from the tower into the fire and fight the hitmen.
It's probably because, you know, the screenwriter wanted this theme of nature as a force driving these events. So thematically, it's like, we've got the fire, we've got the lightning, and, you know, it's probably just that sort of thing. Probably going for that.
It's a shame because it's like I said, I think I even said it in an Instagram story. There's a good pedigree behind this film, and it doesn't quite make it in terms of, like, it tries to be that sort of, like, you know, the sort of the sort of realist coldness of or cruelty of something like No Country for Old Men, where, like, you think somebody's your hero and he's just gone. I mean, like, it's not a happy 3-act structure. Stuff changes. There's moments where people get killed and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But it's that sort of, like, yeah, life doesn't tie itself up nicely and sweetly like a packet of candies. Like, it's trying to do that cold realism thing.
Is it a good movie?
But it doesn't quite work. It's just fine, is the thing.
Out of 10?
And that's the thing. 6.
Out of 4.
3.7.
Not consistent. Where can you stream it?
3.7 out of 4 is quite high.
Yeah, I did that wrong. I meant to say 2.7. I mean, it's HBO Max.
Okay, so it could be on Sky.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's Those Who Wish Me Dead. It's disappointing because I've been an Angelina Jolie fan forever, and it's like I want her in good movies ever since Hackers. So hopefully the Eternals does her some good. And then I guess the last thing we can talk about is Night Moves. if you want to talk about that a bit, Brian.
Yeah, we'll get to MODOK next week.
We'll get to MODOK next week. I mean, the thing with MODOK,
we'll get to it next week.
Yeah, so far 2 episodes in, there's not a lot to say about it. You know, it's just doing funny shtick. Hopefully, it'll build some character into it.
And it's fun to just have Patton Oswalt on TV once a week, like King of Queens.
I watched Night Moves. It's another Christopher Lambert. It was 1992. I definitely watched it thinking, when did Silence of the Lambs come out? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What's your relationship with this film, Brian? Like, you saw it a lot when you were younger, so tell me how you feel about it. What you like about
I'm
it.
trying to. Well, I mean, like I brought it up last week because it was, Highlander, Avengers, Endgame, chess. It was just making silly connections. I assumed more people would have seen it. I guess people hadn't. I think I would. I think I saw it because I'm trying to tell the short version here. Like, my parents would have been quite strict about like following, ratings on things. There was a lot of stuff that was probably like stuff like Tremors. I saw by chance. Like, I wouldn't have been able to rent something like Tremors because the cover was quite, scary or whatever. Yeah, and then when I eventually did see it, I was like, this is quite silly and fun. I think how I ended up seeing Night Moves, which I believe was 18s, was I don't know if anybody else has ever heard of something like this. There was a video delivery guy that would drive around with a backseat full of VHS tapes.
I think video delivery guy is probably a nice name for what he was.
He would drive around and he would have a
backseat full of VHS.
Backseat full of VHS, and like he had some great stuff in there. He had so much kind of a golden harvest, like 70s, 80s kung fu movies, and you could rent up to maybe like 5 things from him for like a tenner, and you keep him for a week. He'd come back the following week, and I don't know, it was just this bizarre thing. And I think that's how I ended up seeing Night Moves. So I would have watched it quite a bit then because I had the tape for a week. And
so hold on, this guy was just cottage industry in the back of his polo, bunch of VHS, kept track of who had what.
Yeah.
Would go around and get his shit back.
Yeah.
I mean, as a guy with a wall full of fucking DVDs and VHS,
I wonder,
some passive income.
I wonder, did he maybe own a store? So he had this quite big catalog of stuff, and then maybe did the store fall through, and I don't know. But I think that's how I ended up seeing it, and I think that's why I ended up watching it quite a few times. But even as a kid, I was kind of going, this is so silly that, Lambert is this. Are chess players rock stars? Maybe they are. You know what? I bet they are. I bet Kasparov. I bet Kasparov
has rock stars.
Yeah, absolutely,
100%.
Yeah, just such a bonkers premise for a film. Aidan, why don't you kind of give us your take on it? You watched it more recently. So
in The Queen's Gambit, there's literally that guy who is like a rock star.
Yeah.
He has a knife for no reason.
Yeah.
The cover of Night Moves is a rip-off of some DVD cover. And I can't think of it. I thought it was a Harrison Ford movie like K-19 or something. But like, it's a rip-off of some cover of a movie. You know that thing where kind of like the movie comes out and it looks a certain way, and then later they kind of just like redesign it to make it fit into kind of like a category more and attract certain things. It's like that.
So like broadly then, the plot of this is that there's a series of grisly murders taking place in and around a international chess championship, and the target of the serial killer is Peter Sanderson, who is played by Christopher Lambert, and he is killing people. And is he leaving clues for Christopher? Like there are some odd phone calls. He starts by killing the woman that Christopher Lambert is having serial one night stands with.
That's how he becomes a suspect in the first place. Yeah.
Yes. And so there's no question about who the serial killer is from the very beginning of the movie, at least in terms of, like, we know we have a flashback to 1972 where 2 children are playing chess. One child loses and he goes nuts and tries to stab the other child with a pen. We see the father leaving the family because this child is a psychopath and he says he's crazy. and his mother is a depressed alcoholic. The mother then slits her wrists, bleeds out in a bed, and the child with a bottle of milk walks through her blood on the bed, looks at her as she is drowsily slipping away, looking at him, takes the box of chess pieces off the nightstand and just walks out of the room and leaves her to die, and he goes and plays chess with himself. So we know from the very beginning, this kid's our serial killer.
That period of time was very much about the kind of, soft core erotic thriller.
Yes.
Your basic instincts, single white female, fatal attraction, with a bit of Silence of the Lambs. These were very much the films of the time.
Yeah, and people have said that the proliferation of the porn industry, home video, and the internet kind of killed the sex thriller, because it was a sideways way of going and seeing
and
something a bit saucy.
There was one guy writing all those movies at the time as well, funnily enough.
Say that again?
There was one guy writing all those, like he didn't write this, but it was one guy at the time. It was Joe Esterhaz or something. He wrote all of those kind of softcore thrillers. So he was one of the most kind of prolific writers of the early 90s, and he looked exactly like you'd expect him to.
So the guy makes contact with Christopher Lambert, who, the police confront him with this dead girlfriend. He denies even knowing her in anything other than a passing way. Then the serial killer gets in touch, and he goes back to the police and goes, "Hey, look, I was lying to you. I do know her, and this guy's trying to blackmail me or engage me in this weird game." By the time they make the leap to the idea that he is killing women in a grid pattern to emulate a chess game that he and Christopher Lambert played 10 years previously, so that Christopher Lambert could anticipate and engage and play this game with him. At that point, I think I'd shut off trying to understand the logic of it, because Christopher Lambert turns to a whiteboard with a map of the island on it and says, "Look, it's a grid like the chess game," and he draws this grid on a map that kind of had a grid layout of the streets anyway, and his grid bears no resemblance to any. It makes.
Tell me if you're listening that you don't want to watch this immediately, based on what the last 30 seconds that Aidan has just said.
I'm spoiling this movie up and down. I was paying over much attention perhaps, and I was like, okay, I know who the serial killer is.
Let's not spoil it, just in case people.
I'm not going to spoil it, but Tom Skerritt's great. Diane Lane is great. I realised in watching this movie that I don't think I've seen anything with Diane Lane in it aside from the Superman movies.
Wow.
She looks like Catherine Zeta-Jones in the 90s. I was like, oh wow, I have never seen her before. She's gorgeous. Oh, she's in The Outsider, so I must have seen that. Daniel Baldwin is giving it loads, if you remember Daniel Baldwin in it. At one point he puts his gun to Christopher Lambert's head and is threatening to shoot him because he thinks he's the killer, and it's like, you're going to lose your job for this sort of behaviour. You can't be a police officer, pull your gun, stick it in the guy's face.
On the wiki page for this film, under the production setting, the last paragraph is, Daniel Baldwin later admitted to being addicted to cocaine during this time in his life, which may have helped his character appear to be out of control. And it's kind of obvious.
I mean, I would feel like Christopher Lambert didn't admit to being on cocaine at this time in his life, but at the end of that moment, you can tell they did a chunk of it in one take, or some continuity staff member or continuity crew member was brilliant, because he pushes the gun against his forehead, and when he pulls it away, there is an imprint circle of a gun just dug into his forehead, and it is there for the next 4 shots. So either they did this in one take with multiple cameras or something, or continuity was on point for this film.
It's very much a type of backdraft sort of film as well. I just made a connection there with Baldwin and backdraft, but serial killer, but with chess. Serial killer, but with firefighters. You know, that definitely that was a kind of a genre thing, I guess, at the time as well.
So I think I would have watched this in the 90s and I would have enjoyed it. Watching it now, it seems so wildly illogical in so many ways. But I mean, I don't know how to feel. I don't really know how to.
You know what's
how to land on it.
Quite strange to think.
Silence of the Lambs was 91.
But here's the thing, right? That film was 92, I believe. Mm-hmm. 7 was only 3 years later, which is bizarre to think of, because like 7 is a great film, stylistically looks great, but 7 could have been made today, you know. Mm-hmm. And it's only 3 years after this. Like it's really impressive that like the concept of 7, and unfortunately Spacey being great at the end of it and everything, like it does all these things right, but on top of that, it completely redefined that type of thriller and had so many kind of pale imitators afterwards. But it's bizarre to think that, you know, Night Moves is this, you know, kind of document of a very typical cheesy genre type of film, and then only 3 years later you had 7 come along and completely redefine it, you know, and do it in a much more because essentially it's a kind of that similar trope of, you know, serial killer but with, and in this instance it's serial killer but with the Bible, and yet it's this 7 holds up so well today, you know. And it's kind of bizarre to think that 3 years isn't a huge amount of time, but
there's a thing in filmmaking when you see shots and sequences put together where, like, we had to tick a box, we had to get every piece of this person's credentials listed, we had to establish these people's relationship to each other, we had to establish what the next motivating factor of the scene was going to be, and there's no real, fucking pretentious as fuck, but there's no real truth to a moment in a scene. There's just a list of stuff that we need to get through to get the plot moving.
Yeah.
You mentioned Night Moves. I'm trying to work backwards and go, did you like this movie?
Well, like I said, I would have seen it quite young. And yeah, I did get the impression that I was probably in the minority of people who'd actually seen it. You know, I was kind of curious if either of you had actually seen it as well, and what your take would have been. I'm
never watching it again.
Oh yeah, no. Like I said, I wouldn't say it was good. It was weird that it was this thing that I randomly saw.
It is weird.
Yeah.
It is weird. There's another chess grandmaster who, like, slowly gets crazier. You know, he's like, don't be so superstitious about this, that, and the other. And then someone tries to sit him down and he's like, no, I have to face north. That's where my power comes from. And the next time you see him, he's wearing a tinfoil hat. And it's like, this is a weird little progression they have going on with this guy. Let me just see if I have, I was trying to keep notes as I was going on. A lot of screeching cars in the score. I don't know if you remember the opening sequence in black and white. Like, it's like, you should go and watch the opening sequence again. Someone just discovered a synthesizer or sampling. And there's, like, screeching cars to try and build tension. I wrote 9 minutes to boobs. In case you were wondering,
is that the only instance of boobs? I would have thought it was later. No. I would have thought it was later in the film.
There is a later. There's the steam room scene is creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the steam room scene?
Yes.
So they go to consult a psychotherapist to try and get an insight into what a serial killer or a psychopath might be doing on this island. And we meet this guy. And he's like, well, you know, I just do personal therapy. Like, this isn't really my field. And then the next scene is a steam room. And a woman walks in on Christopher Lambert. It's Diane Lane. And she goes, oh, I didn't realize anyone was in here. Goes and sits down. And then we just get a shot of Christopher Lambert staring at her. And then slowly raising his eyes. And then we get the reverse shot as it looks up her. It's really fucking creepy. She should have run out of that place immediately and gone, yep, that's your man, that's your serial killer, that's creepy. And then we find out she's another therapist that once the male guy, the male therapist, said, yeah, well, this isn't really my field, but I mean, I can give you some thoughts on serial killers. Hey, why don't we get my colleague, wrap her in a towel, and throw her in the room with him? It's a weird chain of thought that leads to that scene. My biggest take, I mean, there's a Jaws mare. She comes into Tom Skerritt to tell him to get this serial killer or arrest somebody so that we can open up the tourists. And he tells her to go and shove it up her ass. Like, there's a Jaws mare scene.
It's a bizarre movie. It's bizarre that it happened.
It's a bizarre movie.
And it says a lot about what was, being greenlit at the time.
My revelation, my epiphany is Christopher Lambert is a beta release of Christoph Waltz. When Christoph Waltz came out, they updated the firmware to include, charm and charisma. But
I think Lambert obviously had a degree of charm, clearly.
He's a plank. He is a plank that can deliver lines. I think he must be very charismatic in his natural French.
What was the film he was in? The Luc Besson one? Was that Subway? That was...
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what happened with Christopher Lambert is he had indie success in France, or probably mainstream success in France, that led to Greystoke, which requires him to be not much more than monosyllabic. Then he had Highlander, which was so goddamn huge, it gave him the next few years to make things like this. And it's fine, we just don't see him around that much anymore. And again, he works in France quite a lot. He's still working, and he still pops up on TV shows and stuff like that. But I don't know, there's something... He's a plank. That's my take on this movie. It ends ludicrously abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
Does he say checkmate at the end of it? Is that the last line?
I can't remember.
I think the last line is just him holding a gun and he goes, checkmate, and then credits.
I want to make it clear that I didn't bring it up as a recommendation. It was just more that this curious thing that, if you're curious, check it out. Don't expect to like it. It's just more of a bizarre thing that I figured I probably was in the minority of people who'd actually seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I watched it, and these are my thoughts on it. It's a very odd.
I'm expecting to hear from Chris and Yuki what their thoughts on it were. Let's continue in the Christopher Lambert. Let's get their thoughts.
The Lambert canon. Looking through those, looking through the filmography of Diane Lane, it puts Streets of Fire on the table again. I still haven't watched that movie. So I might go off and watch that. Other than that is my list for the week. Is there anything you want to address?
Not specifically. I guess, one other trailer that we didn't mention that I did see this week was Last Night in Soho.
Oh yeah, this has been we were all surprised that Eternals was this week, but yeah, Last Night in Soho was this week as well.
Mm-hmm.
What did you make of it?
It looks interesting. I'm not a huge Edgar Wright fan. I know he's super talented. He's great, but he is much the same way that I don't particularly like Tarantino. I think they're magpies, which there's nothing wrong with. That's cool, but I don't massively engage with either of their films.
Do you think I when I'm watching a Tarantino movie, I feel like he's waving his references in my face.
Yeah.
And screaming about them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watch an Edgar Wright movie, I feel like he's taking, he's using, and he's trying to add to it. Like, you can find them, you can point at them, you can look at them if you want. But I don't think of him in that same way. My take on the Last Night in Soho trailer, though, in just watching it, is it looks like a straight ghost movie. It looks like a straight like a Halloween horror movie.
Yep.
Which, we haven't seen him do, and
I'll
movies.
still check it out. There's no denying he's talented. I just don't particularly like a lot of what he's done. I was a big fan of Spaced. I was a huge fan of Spaced when it came out, but I think Spaced has aged quite a bit as well. I don't get and Spaced is Spaced is very much kind of like you're saying, Spaced is waving around the things it's referring to and things like that. And
Sure.
it's funny the first couple of times I watched it, but like I said, when I went back and watched it later, I was like, it's not that it's bad, it just didn't elicit the response that it used to.
Yeah.
And I think he's a very kind of clever clogs director, there's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of showing off and everything, and it's all great, it's all clever, but I don't really connect emotionally with this stuff.
In terms of that, I would lump him in more so with a Wes Anderson than a Tarantino, or sort of a mix between the two. He's very referential like a Tarantino, but he's very stylistic, stuck in his own tropes like a Wes Anderson. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, I think you could say Tarantino's stuck in his own tropes also,
So his movies after Space, though, are Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End, Scott Pilgrim, and Baby Driver. That's those 5.
I always think he's a lot of clout, but I don't know why. I like Spaced, but it was good, and I haven't watched it in years. And Shaun of the Dead are fun, but I think that's kind of because it's the combination of everybody from Spaced.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I didn't like. I was surprised. I didn't like
Baby Driver.
I didn't like.
Kev's on 1.5 speed. It's crazy.
Am I?
No, you're just talking really fast and short.
I didn't like Shaun of the Dead at all, and I was really surprised because I was still a Spaced fan at that point. Yeah, I kind of hadn't gone back and checked out Space and kind of reevaluated it. But when I saw Shaun of the Dead, I didn't care. Like there was no point where I kind of was pulled into it. I just didn't enjoy it. And I haven't really enjoyed his films,
That's a fundamental issue. Like, I listed those there to sort of see at what point you fell off, because they're all the same. But if you're like from the very beginning, it wasn't for me, then fair enough.
Didn't get into them, I thought Baby Driver was decent, but like I've watched it once and I had no desire to watch it again,
But also, Baby Driver should have ended at one stage in the movie, but then it kind of goes on like maybe twice more where it should have ended, But it's just like again, it's like Spaced, and then the Cornetto trilogy, as they call it. It's kind of like he's a lot of ego. I want to say not ego, but it's just kind of he's very sure of himself, and it's like I'm not entirely sure where that comes from. And he has a big following, but again, it's like
You think he's
like,
very...
Do I think he's very sure of himself? I think Edgar Wright does have a bit of a chip on his shoulder for some reason. That's my impression of him to a degree.
Interesting.
Because
I don't get that. Like,
I think he thinks he's highbrow.
I think he's probably a bit snobby about his own tastes.
Yeah.
And he wants to do the things he wants to do. And he's not 10 films in at this point. Every film he's made has been his film that he's written and directed. And
I do like Scott Pilgrim, though.
I admire that to a degree if you can work within that system. It does mean longer periods of time between films.
Quality
I don't think of him as an asshole, or...
I don't know if asshole is probably too strong a word if I said that, but I do think I think he's a little bit like... snobby might be a better term to say, but it's just like... It's like kind of... and I enjoy the Cornetto movies or whatever, that trilogy, but it's kind of like... It's like, at the end of the day, they're silly comedy action movies. It's not as if he's doing a Wes Anderson or Tarantino even to a lesser extent, but I think he probably does like to imagine himself in the same running as some of those more prolific directors, and it's like, I don't know if he has the same resume.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I want to disagree with you, basically, just because I think he's not been around as long as a Tarantino or a Wes Anderson. I think he's working to build his portfolio. I think his portfolio is specifically his. He makes films that look and feel like an Edgar Wright film. I don't want to say action comedies.
I like them.
He tried to make his way into the... Like, there was a moment where he was going to, like, straight up Hollywood... when he got involved with the Marvel and the Ant-Man end of things.
I would have liked to have seen his Ant-Man. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say, but I would have liked to have seen his Ant-Man.
But you see, I think there's an element of that's where Joe Cornish has kind of fallen down a bit. is like he made Attack the Block, and then he wrote Tintin, and has tried to get stuff working in the larger studio end of things. And I think he, like, he made that Kid in King Arthur. Not, what was it called? I thought Joe Cornish's Attack the Block showed such huge promise that I wanted to see something else from him immediately. And
They're making a sequel to that, aren't they?
but that's what it's turned into, rather than like another cool horror movie on a low budget. 2 years after that, he got involved with Spielberg and got writing on Tintin and got connected to bigger projects, but those never manifested. And I think if he had done, I don't know, I mean, maybe he's made the connections that are laying the groundwork for bigger things, but like, I don't want a sequel to Attack the Block. Attack the Block ended beautifully. You know, it ended with like that enough open, like the first Matrix. There's an open question that you can fill in your own blank, and it's like, let's leave that there. You know, I don't need an Attack the Block sequel. Another alien lands in the block. Is that it? I don't know. I think Cornish is smart and could have done something else.
Speaking of King Arthur.
Oh, Jesus.
Can we not?
Will I say
we
it?
not?
Will I say it? Did we mention his
Say
name
it.
this? Did we mention his name this episode?
We haven't.
I
haven't
mean,
yet.
On this week's episode of the Snidecast.
Zack Snyder's going to do a King Arthur movie that's based in the Wild West. I love it. Possibly going to be his best work yet. Anything in Wild West.
I sent you the clip of the interview where he talked about the workouts on 300.
Oh, I didn't watch it. I despise
No,
it.
well, it's just an article where he says that, like, when we were making
I don't.
300, I was the first guy in the gym at
I
5 in the
know.
morning. I did the workouts before everyone else. My times and weights went up on the board, and you had to beat my times. Few did.
Let's not get into it.
I don't know how we're slowly turning him into the villain of this podcast, because it's like, I've enjoyed his movies. He sounds
think
like
we're-
he's an alright dude.
I think we just enjoy ragging on him a bit. I think it's become a
It's
bit
kind
a
of because he keeps making the news, or making our news feeds. Maybe we need to change our algorithms and fucking go read a book.
I think he got a new publicist.
Oh,
And that's why we're seeing as much of him as we are.
Yeah, he's popped up all the time. Like, when have you ever seen somebody, in the press so much doing so little?
yeah, because you don't see, like, we don't even have that many, like, let's talk about the MCU, for example. We there's less about, like, some of those directors, the kind of way, who've done more successful movies to a degree.
Taika Waititi is in a throuple, and it barely registered.
Do you think that's...
Do what?
I saw the pictures. Taika Waititi with Tessa Thompson and Rita Ora on a balcony snuggling. And the way that picture looked... I don't know, maybe you've got more information than me, but like I saw like pictures of that photo set, and it felt to me like they'd spotted the photographer and they're like, hey, let's fuck around with this guy. And they just all snuggled
Yeah.
up together and made it look
I hear that.
something.
I hear Disney aren't happy about it anyway. So who knows?
That Taika Waititi's in a throuple.
Yeah, essentially.
You're right. The Zack Snyder's publicist end of things, because I was trying to go, well, maybe it's just a Netflix push, but the Snyderverse thing was a HBO thing, and that's Warner's. So somebody's working overtime for him. King Arthur in the Wild West. What, is there a gun in the stone?
There was a TV show years ago I used to watch on TV3, and it was called Dead Man's Gun or something like that. And it was essentially a gun that would be passed. It was an anthology, basically, of stories that were connected by this gun that would be passed on to different individuals and would have affect their lives in different ways. And it was great. And I like that kind of mystical Wild West type of stuff. You don't see it a whole lot, like, especially in like live action things.
How does it
But,
even make sense though? Because like,
gun stuck in a rock.
but like,
Gun stuck in a rock, Brian.
the United Kingdom still has a monarchy. There's a you can
Gun stuck in a rock.
they had kings. There's a mythology about kings, and they had like what's the modern day American equivalent to kind of trace that story? Like what?
Abraham Lincoln, gun stuck in a rock.
Right, cool.